like we have a quorum. Thanks, Michelle. Looks like we have a quorum, so I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's board meeting. We do have some public comment. I want to recognize Jill Howdyshell, who submitted some written testimony. And Jill, you have 2 minutes to make public comment.
Great. I just wanted to share with the board my experience in November as a working mom trying to take my kids to the pool at Mount Scott Community Center. You know, Mount Scott, I know, is just all of Portland is really struggling with lifeguards. And so I checked the calendar and saw that they have open swim on Fridays, but it's really hard for me by the time I get home from work, you know, because it's 4 to 7 to get my kids there. So in Friday, like as a teacher, we call it No School November, because there's so many days when we don't have school and we're trapped inside with bad weather. And I was excited because we had 3 Fridays in November that there was no school, and I was planning on bringing my children, and they canceled the play swim 2 of the 3 Fridays, and one of the times the messaging was unclear. And, you know, I had emailed and texted parent friends to meet at the pool, and it felt really bad. And then the one Friday that I was able to make it, the weather was really bad and they made us wait outside. And we kept asking, the line was long and it was stormy. And we asked to wait inside and we were told no, we had a choice that we could wait in line outside or not swim. And it made me feel really bad. And it made me feel bad for lots of reasons, but I really just want my kids to swim. Swim lessons are impossible for me to sign up for, as you probably know that it's really a shortage. And so the open swims, you know, I was really looking forward to it and it was just disappointing. And I just want the community center to look at a school calendar, look at days when there's no school, and instead of closing down swims to say, what can we do to open them? Like, how can we get more kids to the pool? And if it is the lifeguard shortage, then I would ask, as like a taxpayer and a Portland citizen, that you start explaining what you're doing to address the shortage in a way that like I feel like, wow, something's gonna happen. I work at a middle school where we're short teachers, and every week our admin team tells us what they're doing to hire more teachers. And I feel like it would be helpful if Parks and Rec did that, like told the public what they're doing to hire more lifeguards if that's the problem. If it's not the problem, then I really question why they would cancel play swims on days when there's no school, when it's already extremely limited. Fridays from 4 to 7 and Saturday mornings for an hour and a half. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. Yeah, this is an issue, a major issue that has been brought up before. I don't see the Bureau's HR person who, one of the concerns that we had was about, you know, being able to recruit and retain lifeguards and providing those kinds of opportunities. But I do see that we have Maximo Behrens, who is our Recreation Services Division Director, on the line. Maybe he can speak to some of the specific challenges. I do know that there is some attempt to integrate with the PPS school calendar, but I totally hear your frustrations. And so Maximo, do you want to try and address some of that?
Sure, I can just start off by apologizing for the challenges with the programming in there. It's going to be our ongoing goal to continue to work on staffing and really adhere to posted swimming times. Yes, we're working very closely with our HR department to bring online some additional support, to bring on specific aquatic hiring support. For that. That process is ongoing, and we hope will continue to move forward in a way that can really help us focus on what is really a national challenge of within the aquatics industry. And so with that, we're also working on updating our operating hours so that that is more reflective of real-time operation. And all of our programming is done year-round with an overlay of the school programming calendars with that. And so it's always to our utmost goal make sure that we are establishing available programming at a time that is reflective of school programming. So we're going to be continuing those efforts and really try to align that with our staffing efforts.
Thanks, Maximo. And I see that Margaret actually did sign on. And Margaret, I know that we've asked you for briefings on the workforce development component on lifeguards and other aquatic staff in the past. I don't know if you're prepared to give a 1-minute sort of summary on what's going on since Jill brought this important issue up to us.
Well, what I can, excuse me, what I can share with the team is that with the aquatics program, we have added a talent engagement specialist specifically focused on aquatics hiring. And we're hoping to have that person start after the beginning of the year. We're in the midst of actually interviews this week with that individual. And so outreach and recruitment for aquatics is a national trend. It has been for years. It's just been amplified with the pandemic the last couple of years. It's been challenging to find people to fill those positions. And so what we're doing is we're dedicating an individual that will do nothing but recruiting for aquatics. You know, as our programs and our services have expanded, it's been less and less time for our actual recreation aquatics team to be able to help with that. This person will team up and partner with the existing talent engagement specialists that we have right now. And we've been really successful in a lot of things that we've done this year in getting more connected with the community, being at more events, building relationships, which is really critical in today's recruiting environment. We already have different events that we'll be participating in starting in January. We have PPS, a great partnership, with Portland Public Schools. And we're looking at going into school assemblies and actually doing Parks and Recreation, very specific recruiting there, tabling at events, also local colleges and universities. So we're putting the resources in place to really hit the ground running while we've already been doing it, but really running fast after the beginning of the year when we have a new person join us. I think that's going to be essential because it also has a need for one person to do nothing but recruiting for aquatics. I will also say tomorrow before council will be the ratification of the recreation labor agreement, which is really significant. When it comes to our outreach and recruitment efforts, I'm happy to say that it's been a really great experience negotiating this year for recreation. It's probably been the friendliest and most open discussion that we've had at a negotiating table. And part of that is also including, we looked at processes to improve, but most importantly, when it comes to outreach, recruitment, and retention of our existing staff, is we really took a look at wages. And are we not only going to be at market, but in the aquatic situation, we're actually going to be a leader in the market, which we haven't been for a while. So we're going to see salaries increase significantly, which is going to have a direct impact on our outreach as well. So that labor agreement goes before council tomorrow. And so when we start the new year and we're opening up new recruitments, we'll also see new wages. So really quick summary of kind of where we're at right now.
Thank you for that, Margaret. Thank you for your comments, Jill. And I hope, if she's on, oh, she's there. I hope, I know it's not satisfying in terms of making sure that, the pool is open when you wanted to be using it, but I hope that it assures you that, the Bureau is making some efforts to address this issue, and hopefully we'll be able to see some movement in the right direction. Thank you. With that, we're going to move to general announcements. We were going to have the new Parks Board liaison to Commissioner Rubio's office. Angela Rico introduced herself. Unfortunately, she is out ill today, but just so that folks know, the former Parks Commissioner's liaison, Stephen Herrera, has moved on to other things. We have a new park liaison that Casey and I met with briefly, 2-on-1. And we are excited for her to introduce herself, but it will have to wait another month. Any other general announcements from the floor? If not, I will turn our attention to the November meeting minutes. They were sent out with the board packet. I hope everybody had a chance to review them. Any comments on the minutes?
I had a brief comment that I shared with you, Mike and Michelle. It's just a minor changing of editing of some text.
Thank you, Paul. I did see that and I forgot about it, but thank you.
Sure.
And Michelle, thank you for making that change. Any other comments or questions on the minutes? If not, I will entertain a motion from the floor to approve the minutes as submitted with Paul's clarifications to Michelle.
What were Paul's clarifications to Michelle? Do we have that noted, or is the copy that we have the most updated version?
No, so Michelle, can you pull that up quickly, please? Or Paul, do you have that?
It's on my laptop. It just took me a minute to pull that up. Try to pull it up on my phone.
He had a comment on page 4 for the stipend program. On paragraph 4, sentence 1, Paul Agramus commented that he agreed with Dr. Corbin on being aware of the distinctions of expertise, and also that the stipend should be as simple as possible and not underestimate the value of incentives already in place, which incentives already replaces the word barriers.
Michelle,
and
can you do a screen share on that? Because some people, it's helpful to see the edits in red line.
Okay.
And I appreciate you talking to it too. Thank you. But I can attest that they're clarifying in mine.
So just this specific sentence right here, as it says in the email, Paul wanted to capture a more clarified intent for the comment.
Thank you, very much appreciated. I just want to make sure that I'm aware of what I'm voting on.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I will entertain a motion from the floor to approve the minutes as submitted with Paul's my minor edits.
So moved.
Thank you, Casey. Any second?
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Thank you. One abstention. Alana wasn't in attendance. Thank you, Alana. With that, we'll go to the director's report. Director Long.
Thank you. Just a few items. I wanted to mention some city council items of note and some policy and procedure updates. So city council held a work session on November 29th to review the proposed state and federal legislative agenda for the city. And the city had a lot of items on the federal and state agendas, and Parks in particular submitted one item for the state agenda, the proposal to modify the Oregon revised statutes to allow a Parks and Recreation special district to be governed by a city council. I would just want to note also that we have some neighboring states and cities. Washington State passed a similar legislation in 2002, and Seattle passed a Parks district in 2014. So there's precedent in our neck of the woods, as it were. And this is one of the, as you know, one of the alternative funding measure items that have come up at least twice now during different ballot initiative task force meetings. So, so that happened. Margaret alluded to it. Tomorrow there's 2 emergency ordinances before the council to ratify a successor collective bargaining agreement between the city and laborers local 483, that they represent both recreation and our seasonal maintenance workers. So it's significant in that we're likely going to see increased wages, which hopefully in turn will improve recruitment and retention in those areas. So we're excited to see those move forward. Also tomorrow, City Council will adopt a Human Resources Administrative Rule on employee work location, which will define allowable work location and related criteria, which has come up since the pandemic. We've had a lot of people who've been teleworking and remote working from all corners of the globe. So this will actually require that city employees live in Oregon or Washington. The rule is also accompanied by a new future of work policy that will require employees who are currently serving in roles that allow for remote work will be required to report to work in person at least 20 hours a week. And so that won't go into effect until April. And we are encouraging staff, if they have issues or concerns, to get in touch with us so that we can talk through it, because it's going to be a little disruptive for us, changing our workflow situation, especially here in the Portland building. In terms of policy and procedure updates, the Park Ranger program is working on a project to update Title 20, which is the city code that is responsible for park rules. The project was identified in their strategic plan, which was completed last year, I believe, and it seeks to clarify ambiguous and complex language, make appropriate updates, remove outdated references, and update codes to comply with new local and state laws. In addition, the project is an opportunity for the Bureau to codify the roles and responsibilities of park rangers, including the authority that rangers have to implement and compliance for rules. The Park Ranger program will expects to present to the Parks Board this winter and review involvement opportunities for the board. And then with regards to the stipend standard operating procedure, which you all got a glimpse of, the development of that project continues. And we anticipate that we will have drafts for the board to provide feedback on in the coming weeks. So I'll have a discussion with Casey and Bonnie about how we want to move that through either a working group and then a full board, depending on the timing. And that's all I've got. And of course, always suggest that folks read the incredibly robust and thorough monthly report that gets sent to you as well.
Thank you, Director Long. I see a couple of hands. Adam, then Corbin.
Thanks so much, Bonnie, and Director Long, thanks so much for walking us through that. It's exciting stuff. I have a quick question about the return to work policy that you said is coming into effect in April. You mentioned that you're encouraging the workforce now to express any concerns or any comments that they have. First part of my question is, have you gotten feedback that you think is meaningful on how employees are currently reacting to that in the Parks Department? And second question is, do you have a general estimate of how many folks are currently working fully remote and wouldn't be able to come into the office hypothetically if this started tomorrow?
I can ask Margaret. She's receiving the emails regarding any concerns. I have not heard of any myself, although I would say hypothetically, we are hearing some gratitude that we're giving more than what the original 6-week time frame was for our transition. So folks are they feel like they've got enough time to make adjustments to their schedules to adequately implement this. I don't know, Margaret, if you've been hearing any other concerns you want to share, or any of the other managers that are on the call.
No, I would just echo what you've just said, Adina. I think the most important thing that we're hearing from employees is that they're receiving a length of time to be able to consider what this would possibly mean for them. Also, as an organization, you know, we've committed to the employees that we're stepping back to say, okay, well, what does this look like organizationally, and providing input. You know, employees are just asking questions. What of the schedules are going to be available, and some of it we're working through. As far as the question, you know, if we had to implement it tomorrow, there's only a very few employees that this would be a challenge if we implemented it tomorrow. And those employees are actually may continue to work 100% remotely anyways, because they're under exceptions. One of the things that the policy does allow, and what the city will continue to allow, is if employees do need to have an exception for extenuating circumstances, such as for health reasons or other reasons that they need to work remotely. It's really fairly new. It's less than a week that we've all received the news, so we're still digesting it. I have a feeling next month we could probably have more of a report or an update for you.
And to your question, Adam, I know that citywide, it was 60% of city employees continue to work and report to work since 2019, since the pandemic, since 2020, sorry. And 40% were reporting to work in some, hybrid capacity. That's citywide, and I imagine Parks is closer to 80-20. I don't know, again, Margaret, sorry, if you can correct me on that percentage.
Yeah, I don't have the exact percentage. So,
yeah. But it's higher than 60-40. It's higher than the city average. We have more people working in the field than the rest of the city, for sure. Corbin?
Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. Thanks so much, Director Long and Margaret.
You're welcome, madam. Corbin?
Corbin, I think you have your mute button still on.
Thank you. I touched something. I don't know what I did. So could you say more on the Parks and Recreation Special District to be governed by a city council? Does this change jurisdiction around Parks and Rec? I'm so unfamiliar. Is there a way for you to define it or speak about it a little bit more?
I could try, but I'm probably not the best person to do that. So park districts are independently managed from the rest of the city as its own entity. And we currently don't have legislation that allows for that. And so this would just allow for it. It doesn't necessarily mean we're moving forward with that notion. But it is a notion that has been brought up both by the Ballot Initiative Task Force this past year, as well as when we had a similar task force back in 2019 when we when we started the Sustainable Future Program. I don't know if anyone else has. I know Paul can probably. Paul knows a lot about the park district situation.
Maybe one thing, so Corbin, so Oregon. The Oregon administrative rules allow for special districts across a range of services, and we have them for certain things, including, so for example, Tualatin Hills Parks and Recreation District is a special district that is a parks-based special district. We also have other special districts. For example, the library has its own special district that's separate from the county, so it has a dedicated revenue source. One of the things that's come up is the potential of separating out parks as a park special district. But current legislation, actually Alana is probably the best person to answer. Where'd she go? She was here, there she is. So, but the current legislation would not allow, as Director Long correctly pointed out, that would not allow City Council to be the governing body that oversees that special district. So it would need to be an independent governing body So more than management, but actual governance and policy decisions would have to be made by this independently elected body. So I think what Director Long was saying is that one of the things that is being explored is to allow City Council to be that governing body. And where that is, I'm uncertain, but maybe again, Alana might be able to shed a little bit more light on that topic.
Bonnie, I think you just said it perfectly. You know, I would just add that as you think about this, you know, I think people get hung up because you're thinking about a parks district and that makes it sound like it's separate from the city. And right now you can create a special district with whatever boundaries you want. So you could create under current statute, a special district for parks that looks like the city of Portland borders, or you could create a district with different borders. This doesn't affect any of that. This just says who is allowed to be the governing body, because right now it would have to be either a separate elected governing body, or in some cases for some types of districts, county commissioners can be the governing body. But those are really your only two options at the moment.
Thank you. I guess my follow-up question would be, one, was this done with a purpose for some intention down the line? And what are the opportunities or the benefits to Portlanders with this district?
That's a very good question, Dr. Corbin. And so we're looking at this because Portland Parks and Recreation has a $500 million deferred maintenance backlog. And as wonderful as the parks levy is, it doesn't help us create a significant reduction of that deferred maintenance backlog. Park district would give the entity more ability to raise money. Seattle Parks went through a similar process about 10 years ago, and they are within the city council is the governing board. And that was a very successful model there. So we're looking at that as a potential model down the road, potentially. We've got to consider 4 years when the levy expires, this renewal, but the scale of that is basically a tenth of what we need to really address the issues that we have long-term. So it's looking at creating some more financial resources for Portland Parks and Recreation.
Can I ask my last question? Because for me, this sounds like an opportunity for public-private funding of things. And so is this a potential slippery slope towards a privatization of park assets, or will this stay within the level of city governance in some capacity?
Yeah, there's no intention or secret agenda to move towards a private-public partnership. It's the example in Seattle is completely a public entity. There's no private involvement in that.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
I'm so glad there's smarter people in the room to answer.
Casey has his 10 seconds.
I do. I'm afraid to ask questions I really don't know anything about. But I see on your report that at last the North Park blocks is finally starting to move. And I'm kind of curious, even though it's still kind of early, who's in charge in terms of moving it? Is it Prosper? And when might it come to us to take a look at?
Yes, so the North Park blocks is our project.
Okay.
Right, it was sort of wed with the Broadway Corridor project, which is stalled out but not dead. And it was brought to Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group this past month, and so I don't know if there's anyone. David is here.
David's here, yeah.
David's here, but he wasn't at the meeting.
Oh.
Alejandro ran that meeting, but I was present. And while Alejandro was trying to figure out his microphone, so that was one of the questions I think I asked actually was, with the developer, a big question mark for Prosper at this point for Broadway Corridor, what does this mean? Because the RFP that has been issued for that work is a 30%.
Right, 30% bill.
So yeah, I don't think, we don't have Lauren or Brett on the line, right?
No, we have Chris Silky is here
yeah,
representing, Ross is here. Ross.
There we go.
Hi, my name is Ross Faulkner. I'm the Capital Growth Program Manager. This particular project you're talking about falls a little bit in my realm, but actually Robin Laughlin would be hers. But however, I did take this through the IGA with Prosper, Portland, and PBOT. So I do know a little bit about it, and we are starting to roll on the project. So specifically, they are moving forward. There's an operations and maintenance piece of this. If any of you guys do know the details of the Broadway corridor, it does float across private and public space together. So as a matter of fact, next week, we're going to get together with Prosper and start to talk about all the really ugly, boring property management stuff that has nothing to do with design or that the public will see on the outside. So those are still rolling along. We haven't stopped because of not having a developer lined up. As a matter of fact, we're being a little more strategic with Prosper's lead on the property management stuff. But as far as the design goes, the RFP is on the street. I'm not sure exactly when the date is that it comes back to us, but it is it's rolling. So
I'm guessing Randy's hand is related to this. Thank you, Ross.
Is there any consideration for extending the time frame on the responses to the RFP? Because I've been hearing a lot of chatter in the design community about the timing of it, and you know, difficulty of putting together teams this time of year, especially if you're looking outside of Portland.
I have not heard. I can talk to Gary Datka, who's the project manager, but I have not heard of that. My understanding, we've had it out since before Thanksgiving, but I could be wrong about that.
I think there was some sort of glitch, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't know the details of it. It wasn't accessible or something.
I'll take a look. Our procurement office, the citywide procurement office, is usually pretty adept at giving us good guidance on that. So I'll inquire and figure out what's.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you. Any other questions for Director Long? Thank you for your report, Director Long. If not, we'll move on to the Q&A for the working group and advisory committee reports. I know David was not able to attend the land use and infrastructure working group, but Alejandro ran that meeting in his stead and submitted a written report. Are there any questions or comments on that? I will note that one of the topics was that North Park blocks had some significant discussion on that.
I think my problem was I kind of read everything all together and it kind of merged with me. So I apologize, but I'm glad we brought it up.
Nope, you're totally fine. If there are no other questions on land use and infrastructure, we'll move to a financial sustainability working group. Mike submitted we had the BAC meeting yesterday, so he submitted a written report just earlier today because he had no time. But any questions or comments with respect to the BAC process, which is presently underway? A number of us were present for that.
Adam put his hand up.
Adam.
Hey, thanks again, Bonnie. Mike, I have a quick question for you. So he's looking at these, let's see, they're referred to review of the decision packages that Parks hopes to build into the requested budget and the respective anticipated funding and impact sources. I'm curious if you could talk me through a little bit on the distinction between aquatics and recreation access.
Oh, I'm not sure if I can.
Maximo's on the line.
Yeah.
or I saw Bob.
And Bob is on the line as well.
No Claudio, but Bob is there.
Sweet, we got the whole group here. Yes, that is an open question, not just to you, Mike.
Bob, do you want to?
Bob or Maximo?
Is that something for you, Bob? Because I think it's an accounting question more than it is an actual.
I can probably take a stab.
Oh, okay. Mike is going to take a stab.
I'll take a stab at it. As I understand it, aquatics is dealing almost specifically with staffing issues related to the aquatic centers, whereas access is related more to collecting demographic data, issues such as translating materials to get out to a broader range of people for the whole range of recreational programs, not just those within the aquatics center. So I think aquatics is a very small subset of the broader whole. That's my understanding.
So it's almost like, you know, square is rectangle, rectangle is square sort of situation where aquatics is in the broader umbrella of recreation access, but not the other way around.
Interesting way of putting it. Yeah.
If you're going Venn diagram on us, yeah.
Yes, that is true, but also these are just two distinct different budget packages. One is specific to aquatics and the other is specific to recreation as a whole. So yeah.
Okay, that's very helpful. And then Maximo, is that operationally, is that treated the same at the city where aquatics isn't necessarily considered a part of the recreation package, but treated as its own subset?
I think I can speak to that. It's Bob,
yeah.
Finance Manager. So from a programmatic perspective, aquatics is part of the recreation portfolio. It's part of that division. With respect to the specific budget packages that we're talking about, it's how those monies are being directed. Does that make sense? Organizationally, aquatics is under the umbrella of recreation.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Bob.
Corbin.
So my question is regarding reducing costs as a barrier. Does this include permitting for community events in parks?
Not this particular budget package. This particular budget package is related to community center fees and activity fees, such as for camp and environmental education. So this particular package, no.
Okay, so nothing on rental fees at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the Financial Sustainability Work Group? And thank you, Bob and Maximo and Director Long for the assist.
Deep bench.
Okay. Moving on to the Community Engagement Working Group. I hope everybody had a chance to review that report. Any questions for Aaron or the Community Engagement or Corbin on the Community Engagement Working Group report? Okay. Thank you, Community Engagement Working Group, for your thorough report. Moving on to the A Park and Wilson Pool Committee report. Dr. Corbin, I don't think you submitted a written report. Do you have a 1-minute summary of status of that committee work?
Sure. In our last meeting, in keeping with the prior work of the students and in the spirit of the naming practices within Portland Parks and Recreation facilities or assets, we decided on a recommendation. So a recommendation was made to rename Wilson Pool to Ida B. Wells Barnett Outdoor Pool. With that said, we decided to split the naming committees a little bit, and the formerly known as Custer Park or A Park now is moving with the speed of community and will require more time and intentional and thoughtful engagement. The naming committee has reached out to NACAC, the Native American Community Advisory Council, and in January, the naming committee will provide a short list of the Native focused name submissions to NACAC, and then there will be plans to do more outreach outside of NACAC to other groups, individuals, and tribes. Just quick thoughts in the future. I think it's really important to separate the naming committees. So one site per naming committee. There was a clear and even interest between the two naming opportunities, depending on which group member you were talking to. So that is my report.
Thank you, Corbin. Any questions on that for Corbin? Aaron.
And I think I know this, but just NACAC is Native American Community Advisory Committee. Yep. Okay.
Thank you for clarifying the acronym.
It was said. It was said.
Oh my God. Okay.
Good to remind.
I mean, come on, it's Dr. Corbin. She's not going to use an acronym.
It's good to know. It's good to know the name though.
Thank you. For the Parks Levy Oversight Committee, I know that the deck was sent out with a packet. I hope everybody had a chance to review that. Any questions for Paul on that? If not, we'll move on to a discussion that the Board Affairs Working Group is bringing to the board. My understanding is that this topic has to go to the city attorney's office, so we can't actually vote on it today.
Yeah, let me go ahead and start. Actually, there's one housekeeping measure I want to go on first, is that in our report, in the Board Affairs Working Group report that was sent to everybody, below what's presently going on, there is the purpose statement that we are presently considering bringing to the board. It would be greatly appreciated if you all could take a look at that and then provide me with any questions, comments, or possible changes. Hopefully before the end of the month, it would be greatly appreciated, because we're trying to get that done. And we are going to bring it later to the board, but we'd like to clean it up as much as possible beforehand. On this, I think what had happened is that the board chair brought the issue of how to format the board reports that we're all getting now to the Board Affairs Working Group. And as part of that discussion, there was a suggestion that we possibly make those public. After we get the formatting done, then they would be simply added as part of the minutes that go out every month, and thereby become public record. As part of that conversation, there has been a referral to the city attorney's office. They are reviewing it and have some comments on it. And so we are, even though it says vote, we're not asking for a vote today, but we are asking for questions or comments or ideas. Just as a reminder, the working group reports are supposed to just go actually to the board chair, and then the board chair then refers to the board. For a long time, they were done orally. So in some ways, they were actually done on the record. They weren't minutes, they were simply reports of the activity that was going on. I think in the spring of last year, we started to do them in writing so that people could have more time to appreciate what was going on and then have any questions from that. And also as a time, as a way to save time. So now we're going to try to format them and have them go out. I don't know if anybody else wants to go in terms of why we're doing this for working groups or committees at this point. I don't think it's necessary. But if anybody has any questions or concerns about having the written board reports attached to the minutes and thereby become public record, great to hear your thoughts right now.
So a question I have is, do we have a sense for what's kind of best practices? Are there other, within the city, are there other working groups that are currently doing this? And if so, why or why not? I don't know who I'm asking.
I couldn't say, yeah, I could not tell you. I don't know. So my answer is I don't know. Check.
It might be helpful just to do a brief history of how the working groups came to be. So for this, I tapped Jim Owens, who's a board member who's rolled off 2 years ago. So in talking to Jim, the history is that previously, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, we were the board before my time. There were a lot of land use decisions or land use activities that were coming to the board. It got into a lot of minutia. It was taking up a lot of board time. So the notion was we could take that offline into a working group and sort of work through that there and then have these reports. And so the land use and infrastructure working group was the first of the working groups. And so then since then we've developed these other working groups, and there were sort of a couple of different purposes there. I just want to check my notes for a sec. So it was to continue doing work between meetings on, we dealt, especially in the land use and infrastructure committee, like with the Rose Quarter I-5 improvements. We're now looking at and reviewing the latest EA. That's not something that's going to happen during a board meeting, so that needs to happen offline. The other piece was in developing relationships with park staff. What's nice about working groups is that it's less formal, it's informal, it's smaller groups, we don't have a quorum. So it's helping as an advisory group develop relationships as supporters of parks, but not necessarily doing it with minutes from that meeting. The report comes close. in terms of summarizing what happened. So I think that is a brief overview of how the genesis of the working groups came about and why they continue to function.
Thank you, Paul. Director Long.
And to the question of, does anyone else do it? We can confer with Community and Civic Life, who oversees the advisory bodies, to ascertain whether or not there's other, advisory committees that are doing that. I suspect that we have the most amount of working groups, like functional working groups. So I'm going to guess that the answer is probably going to be no, but we can certainly look into it. And I'll add also that the BPS's planning and sustainability advisory committee is actually dissolving and reconstituting itself into two separate commissions. One will be focused on sustainability and climate change, and then the other will be on planning and land use. So it'd be interesting to see how they're developing those committees, just adding that, but we can look into what's going on in the rest of the city.
Great, thank you very much.
Just a brief add-on, what I neglected to mention is that another part of it was to empower the board to develop agenda items beyond just what staff brings to the board. So that was something that was another driver for the creation of the working groups.
Great, thank you.
Aaron's hand is up.
Yep, Aaron?
Yeah, I just want to add, it's with the working groups, it's only recently that we've been providing the written reports. I think land use and infrastructure has done that for a long time, right? Or at least they've made a written report, but I know other community groups have not always made written reports. And I just want to add that if we're going to skip reviewing the written reports at the meeting, we have to provide the written reports publicly. So I think it's like one or the other. Like you can't say we're not gonna review the written reports at the meeting. We're just gonna see if anybody has questions without providing those written reports to the public. So I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that without actually providing those reports, because otherwise who knows what we're talking about, right? So that's all.
Hey, Karen. Any other comments? Thank you for your time. If you have any additional comments, please shoot an email to me. I'd appreciate it. Oh, yes, Corbin.
All right. Since we do a lot of this work offline, part of this is to create transparency and also judge what needs to come to the board. So we are not above being criticized or critiqued by community members or residents of Portland. And if they want to look at our minutes and ask us why we're doing something as a particular, the board is doing one way or the other, having that written record and having that transparency is super important. And I think it will actually forge more trust as we move forward as a board.
Thank you, Corbin. Any other? Thank you again for participating. And as I say, please contact me with any additional thoughts or questions.
Thank you, Casey. Moving on to the Parks Foundation report. Randy.
Unmute. There. Hi, everyone. I'm going to put a link in the chat. We just gave out a bunch of money. Very happy to do our small grants program. You can look at the details of the 12 grant recipients on that document. I wanted to just talk briefly a little bit about the kind of ecosystem around the grants, because this has kind of been part of a larger agenda that's been percolating since early in my tenure and really led by my colleague, Jessica Green. And we call it the Friends and Allies Initiative, but there's multiple parts to that. The summits, which some of you have attended and I've talked about previously, and then this kind of on the ground financial support, which comes out of some endowment money that we have, and then also U.S. Bank, and then most recently some of the levy money courtesy of Portland Parks and Recreation. So it's really great to be able to give out 12 $2,000 grants, and we've kind of created this ecosystem of folks that we are working with on like our festival, Paseo, and some of our other work. We pulled together, a grants committee that includes folks like Amanda Stubitz, who curated the Indigenous zone of Paseo, and Daryl Ramsey from Outdoor Afro, who sat on our steering committee from there, and Mike Elliott from this group, and then a couple of PPR folks, Michelle Welton and Kay Bullock Clayton, and Diana Marcela Cuartas from PSU's social practice program, and also as a family liaison with Latino Network. So we've got, really great, sort of fingers from the community, determining where these grants will go. And so we're really kind of proud of this program. And I think it's just really, developing, quite well, and really helps to have a little bit of the levy money in there, because these are small grants that would require a lot of reporting for if they came from the city. And we're looking at kind of future manifestations of this program. We're going to pilot a sort of evolved fiscal sponsorship that we started a long time ago with Friends of Gateway Green, that enabled them to get off the ground and do their good work and lobbying and for the wonderful Gateway Green. And they're going to be receiving a much larger grant from the levy to further evolve their work. But they're small, and the city requires the money be spent up front. And so we're going to essentially forward them their money for their expenses, and then when that's complete, the city will pay us back. So we're effectively loaning them money on a very, very low amount of interest. And all of this was sort of inspired by the Seattle Parks Foundation, which has similar relationships with all kinds of different organizations, giving them grants, giving them technical assistance, sometimes supporting them almost entirely in terms of grant writing and creating websites and all of that. And it's a direction that we hope we can continue to evolve in a Portland form. Anyway, I'm just really proud of the work that Jessica has done with this, and creating these community groups to give out money and to shape the Friends and Allies programs, and create this Friends and Allies initiative. So I just wanted to give you a little kind of peek behind the scenes on that, and share the good news of all these wonderful organizations that have received money from us. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that update, Randy. And it's fun to look through the different organizations that received the grants. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Mike, for serving on that review committee. It's fine. Any other questions for Randy?
Give out money.
What's that?
I said it's always fun to give out money.
Yeah.
And also learning about things that are going on in the community.
There's so many organizations.
It's very feel good.
Yeah. Thank you. Seeing no other questions for Randy, I'm excited to move to the North Portland Aquatic Center update. I see Ken and Melissa and Robin. Wait, where's Robin go?
Yep. There she is.
I'm not sure who I'm here.
And yeah, we've got a whole crew here today to talk about North Portland Aquatic Center. So Robin, I guess, I don't know who's kicking us off, so.
I think I'm kicking it off. Maybe I'll just kick things off. And then the idea was maybe that afterwards, after the presentation, if there are questions, we have a full fleet of folks here to answer any questions. So if it's okay, I'll share my screen.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and get started here. Thank you and good evening. Thank you, Portland Parks Board, for the opportunity to present today. My name is Robin Johnson-Craig. I am the PPNR project manager for the new North Portland Aquatic Center for Portland Parks and Recreation. I'm gonna move, sorry, didn't mean to. The new Aquatic Center will be located in North Portland and will potentially serve residents crossing 11 Portland neighborhood associations, including Arbor Lodge, Bridgeton, Cathedral, East Columbia, Hayden Island, Kenton, Overlook, Piedmont, Portsmouth, St. John's, and University Park. The Parks 2020 visions in 2001 set a level of service goal for full service community centers. To develop a full service community center, that is a center with a pool, arts facilities, classrooms, and active recreation facilities within 3 miles of every resident. Full service community centers provide health and recreation benefits to Portland residents of all ages, helping to make Portland a family-friendly and livable city. Level of service is a metric used by parks providers to measure how well a community is currently served with access to a variety of assets and to identify areas where the additional assets should be added to provide a uniform set of experiences for all households and to achieve greater equity. Currently, 70.6% of the city is served by the 3-mile full service community center level of service metric. PP&R currently has 4 full service community centers, including East Portland, Matt Dishman, Mount Scott, and Southwest Community Center. Charles Jordan Community Center is technically not considered to be a full service community center as it lacks indoor aquatics programming, as the nearby Columbia Pool is now closed. As you can see in the map illustration, the 4 full service community centers have a 3-mile service area and are shaded in blue. The areas not shaded in blue are areas that are not currently served by the PP&R level of service metric for full service community centers. In April 2021, Commissioner Rubio allocated $11.7 million in SDCs to address the level of service gap for full service community center service in North Portland to cover the initial project design, permitting, and public engagement efforts for a new indoor aquatic center. The new indoor aquatic center will serve approximately 22,000 dwelling units that are not currently served by PP&R's level of service metric for full service community centers, as shaded in orange on the map. North Portland's diverse and growing population does not currently have a pool that they can use. There's approximately 70,000 people, including roughly 18,000 people of color and roughly 11,000 experiencing poverty, without a place to learn to swim, to do water aerobics, or exercise. Access to these life skills is a racial equity issue. Black children in the United States drown at a rate 3 times higher than white children. And many factors contribute to this unacceptable public health outcome, including the accessibility of swim lessons. With the North Portland Aquatic Center, PP&R hopes to provide access and opportunities for young children and communities from diverse backgrounds to learn basic water survival skills and explore additional opportunities offered through an established aquatics community center. Now, a little bit about the project. At this time, we have roughly projected the schedule, and we anticipate being able to refine the schedule as we move through the project phases. Given the additional site selection and programming phase, the complexity of this project and scale, we are forecasting 5 to 7 years for project duration. This includes a multi-phase approach, including phase 2, which is where we are currently, for site selection, programming, schematic design, and land use permitting. Phase 3 for design development, construction documents, site development permits, and phase 4 for construction. We actually started this work this past winter, developing the work plan in late 2021, and began an early community engagement effort with the community gathering event held April 23rd at Charles Jordan Community Center. We are currently engaged in the phase 2 effort. This schedule graphic illustrates a little finer detail what we anticipate for the schedule for our phase 2 efforts for site determination, programming, schematic design, and land use permitting. As I mentioned, we started the internal work plan this past summer, engaging the public with our summer community events, getting folks excited about this upcoming project, and to enroll them in our email list for engagement with the intent of having the design team on board this fall, which we were successfully able to do. We started the technical investigation, and we were kicking off the site selection and programming process. Once a site and a program are determined, roughly by the end of next summer, we will begin schematic design with the intent of securing a land use permit by the end of next year, by the end of 2024. Preliminary estimates in 2018 estimated a cost range of $36 to $48.5 million for this facility. With the cost escalation that we have seen on our other capital projects, we have preliminarily estimated $50 million for this project, as we do not have a confirmed site or confirmed program for this facility. We currently have $16.7 million in SDCs allocated by Commissioner Rubio, and a $15 million grant from the State of Oregon Lottery Fund secured this past spring with the leadership of State Representative Travis Nelson. And I actually went to council last Wednesday, and we were able to secure council approval to authorize the grant agreement with the state. This roughly equals $31.7 million in funds currently allocated to the project development. We could have a potential gap of $18.3 million to fund this facility. Commissioner Rubio and PPNR will be working to advance options to consider how to fill the funding gap. Potential funding gap options to consider include a voter-approved ballot measure to provide critical capital funding for the Aquatic Center and potentially other critical capital needs within Portland, requesting additional future city general fund allocations, for example, and also funding from a capital set-aside, a possible capital campaign to solicit private donations, and possible use of PPNR revenues. We completed the phase 1 community engagement efforts this past year and have started on phase 2, but our phase 1 efforts included 30+ stakeholder interviews from April to July, engagement at our summer free-for-all events, at our free lunch and play site visits, several community events, 2 community surveys, and also our project advisory committee recruitment. We have never started engagement this early on a project before we had a design team. So big hats off to our community engagement team for the incredible effort they completed this past summer to really get folks on board and to get excited about the project in general and informed. We have started the phase 2 efforts, and we've just had a significant public engagement event. This past Saturday at Charles Jordan Community Center, we kicked off our first community workshop series. It was a successful event with over 150 folks in attendance. We will have the community survey online and available for the next 2 weeks. And we will be able to post updates on our PPNR website as the project evolves. Our next community event, I'm getting ahead of myself. We have proposed 5 different community events concluding in August of this year. Our next community event will be Tuesday, January 24th from 5:30 to 7:30 at Charles Jordan Community Center. We will be updating folks on the locations of workshops 3, 4, and 5 as we have more information. But we hope that you will attend and also bring friends to these events and help us design the future for the North Portland Aquatic Center. A little bit about our team. The selected architecture firm for the project is ELS Architecture and Urban Design. ELS is an award-winning architectural practice with a 50-year tradition in design for the public realm. They are a recipient of the prestigious AIA California Council Firm Award. They have been included in the Architects 50 for 5 consecutive years, and in Architectural Records 2021 Top 300 Architecture Firms. They specialize in a diverse array of projects, but they have a specific emphasis on aquatic and community centers. They are California Certified Green Business, and they are also a participant of the AIA's 2030 commitment to reduce operational energy use in buildings. They also they're a great team. They wowed the public with this event on Saturday, and I couldn't be happier to have such an accomplished team. They have designed over 100 aquatic and community centers in their history, and their COVID percentage participation for their contract was over 28%. So again, we had our first workshop this past Saturday, and I know that Ken is here and we'll be posting information about the outcomes and the public comments from the online survey as soon as we can. We worked with ELS and the design team, which includes Beth Control Architecture and located in North Portland as our North Portland partner. We looked at prerequisites to think about how to shortlist the sites. And we specifically evaluated PP&R managed or owned sites in North Portland because we did not have the luxury of time to really think about sites that were not owned by other entities such as other bureaus or Port of Portland or Portland Public Schools. With the gap in service that we have in North Portland, our biggest challenge on this project is time. Again, those pre-qualifications include the site is owned by Portland Parks and Recreation. The site is not restricted for development. It has at least 2 acres of open space for the new facility without major clearing of existing tree canopy. We're anticipating anywhere from 40,000 to 60,000 square feet for the building. And we wanted to have at least an acre additional per site and may include parking, a significant amount of parking. Site has acceptable street, transit, bicycle, and walking access, and the site is within 3 miles of residents at the end of the North Portland Peninsula to meet the PP&R level of service goal. Oh, and those 6 sites include Pier Park, St. John's, Northgate, Columbia Park, University Park, and the Columbia Annex site. We recognize and understand and encourage celebrations of the differences that surround us. The diversity and equity are vital to North Portland and to Portland Parks and Recreation ideals and values. As a whole, the North Portland area is more racially diverse with a higher share of Black, Indigenous residents of color than the city of Portland as a whole. The Portsmouth neighborhood is the most racially diverse area on the peninsula and is one of the most racially diverse areas in the state of Oregon, with less than 50% of residents identifying as non-Hispanic white. The neighborhood north of North Lombard and the northern section of St. John's tends to be more racially diverse as well. We have identified preliminary criteria to center equity in the consideration of the possible locations for the North Portland Aquatic Center. Currently, PBOT is working on a transportation master plan effort called North Portland in Motion, and we are coordinating with PBOT the PBOT planning team so that the future site selected can be supported by transportation objectives for the North Portland Peninsula as well. We have heard the following criteria, and we have heard over and over again the following criteria and themes and takeaways that have become clear since beginning our community engagement in April of this year. Access is an important criteria for the future center. We want to ensure that the public specifically wants to ensure that it is walkable, especially for those living in dense neighborhoods and the Portlanders living with low income. We want to ensure that it is bikeable. We want to ensure that it has easy public transit access and build it near a Portland public school, specifically in a dense neighborhood where Portlanders are living with low income. Other criteria to consider also includes the potential for site impacts that the facilities will have on the 6 identified park sites, including loss of tree canopy, loss of recreational amenities, loss of open space, increased traffic in the neighborhood, increased parking in the neighborhood, and possible noise. We are asking community members as we prepare for our January 24th open house and workshop to think about what are the important criteria for selecting a site in North Portland for the North Portland Aquatic Center. In narrowing down the candidate sites from 6 to 3, what criteria would you prioritize? What are the most important considerations in determining the final location? And is there anything regarding site selection that we haven't covered or considered? In addition, we need to consider what amenities the pool will offer. The 4 main pillars of PP&R indoor programming include swim lessons, open swim, lap swimming, and water exercise. We are targeting from the new aquatic center to have the same amenities at a minimum that are provided at East Portland Community Center and Southwest Community Center as a baseline for the program, which includes a big slide, a tot slide, zero entry area, lazy river, whirlpool, interactive fountain feature, and lap lanes. We have asked the community a series of questions on programming as listed on the next slide. We will welcome your programming considerations and comments, and we will have the results from our community workshop in this past survey and online survey towards the end of December, beginning of January, and they will be posted to the PP&R website. And I think that is it. That was a lot of information to cover. So if you need me to go back, I'm happy to scroll back. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Robin. Any questions? I actually dropped a question in the chat, but also on your slide just prior to this one, the wording that you used on the long course pool, should there be further consideration of a 50-meter Olympic size pool? Does that mean it has been considered and moved beyond for a long course pool? Or it seems like the wording on that is a little bit different than the other questions.
That was not intentional, so I apologize if there was any. We have not made any decisions or about a 50-meter pool, and that is part of testing the programming and testing the sites.
Okay, yeah, do you see how the other questions are sort of like, what types of aquatic center? And then the other one, should there be further consideration? It makes it sound like it's been considered and rejected. I had a question. So are the 6 sites shown geospatially in a map somewhere? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm trying to, let's close that.
It might be nice to see those sites mapped on the map that shows the the level of service areas, so that we can see how well they match up with that or not. Just a comment there.
Sure.
Other questions, Corbin?
So it looks like you are looking at the service area of 3 miles, a 3-mile radius as far as the residents that the pool will be serving. Is that correct?
Yes, the level of service metric that was outlined in the Parks 2020 vision is that park residents have access to a full service aquatic center within 3 miles. So that was established in 2001, that level of service metric, yes.
Thank you. Is there a projected capacity that you're trying to meet as far as how many people can serve per day at this particular pool?
That is a really good question. We are looking at capacity because we're trying to size capacity to size of pool, for example. The design team is just starting that investigation. I will share that, for example, the Matt Dishman, which is just south of this map, located here's interstate, and it's down at this in this vicinity. So Matt Dishman, and I'm just doing this from memory, so I'd have to get you the exact numbers. But for example, Matt Dishman Community Center has as all the full service community centers, has a level of service metric of around 104,000 dwelling units. So that means that within that service area, there's 104,000 dwelling units. For comparison, Southwest Community Center has approximately 26,000 dwelling units on a facility that is a lot bigger than Matt Dishman. And as I recall, for North Portland, within that service area, there's approximately 22,000 dwelling units. So there's a much smaller dwelling unit catchment. And but that doesn't mean there won't be a higher desire by community from across Portland to access this center as the newest center. So we could see a high demand. But looking at that catchment area is a very different type of catchment area, for example, from Mount Scott or from Matt Dishman. But we will be looking into that, and we will get you that information.
And just a quick follow-up question. Would the projections be based on the population numbers now? Because Portland has been growing by like 50,000 people in the last like 2 decades or more. Are we looking at growth as well in these particular areas when we're thinking about capacity?
Absolutely. Our current, of course, our current projections are based on current census data that's available to our analyst team and to the design team. So most of our information is coming from the latest Census Bureau tracks. So there is a little bit of wiggle room there because you know that not everyone is responding to the census. We do have the projections that we're also calculating for going to 2035 for a projected increase in population. We do have an ability to track people of color, minorities or children under the age of 18, and people living in poverty as far as our level of service equity tool, but we cannot predict or project where those populations are going to live in 2035. So we can only do a population projection for the whole community.
Thank you.
Other questions for Robin? Casey.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really impressed with this. I'm also impressed with you all going forward, even though there are significant factors, inputs that have not been nailed down yet. And it just, one's kind of bugging me in the back of my mind. At what point do you think you need to lock down your financing before you can stop your progress?
That is a good question. I have wrestled with that with the asset and development team, and that is part of the discussion. At this point, there is a significant range in the cost estimate because we don't have a site and we don't know the program. As we work through this project in this phase one, we will get a better idea of what we're trying to program, and of course, what site and what site issues are we're going to have to deal with. So we'll be able to have finesse our cost estimate. My understanding is that as far as timing of locking down full funding, there is some wiggle room. We can enter into a CMGC pre-construction contract and start looking at bringing the design team for phase two and also the CMGC contractor for phase two on board, as well as enter into a contract with the CMGC contractor without full funding in place. So there is some wiggle room. We are going back to that overall schedule. I think that might be the best slide to talk about timing.
Yeah, and so I don't want you to have to do this, but it sounds like you're going to be able to make it at least through to the summer of 2023, at least.
Oh, we currently have funding to make it completely through phase two with no issue. For phase three, I'm confident that we have funding to get through all the design, development, construction documents, and site permitting. It's the entering into phase four at 2027 and entering into your guaranteed maximum price with your CMGC contractor is where it would be nice to have full funding in place. But my understanding from procurement is that you can enter into a contract without every penny accounted for in your bank account.
Erin and then Randy.
I don't know that this is a question for Robin or more of a question for someone else or a comment. One thing that, and this is wonderful, like there's so much information here. I'm really, it's a lot and I think it's really good. But when I looked at this, what we're looking at exactly right now, this timeline, one of the things that immediately came to my head is that this pool is a replacement for an existing pool, Columbia Pool, right? And it might be a different type of pool. It might make a full community center, all that. And, but it's still not a new, like a whole new facility. And I have just been thinking about what the needs, like projecting needs. This, it takes so long to do things. What are the needs of Portland in terms of pools in 2030, 2035, 2040, et cetera. It's like, we have to be thinking about that now. What are the projections and what are the needs? Because it takes so long, not just to get like financing, but to the actual whole process takes so long. And I'm just wondering what work is being done in terms of projecting out what the needs are, not just like staff needs, but like if we had full staffing. I know that at the very beginning of this meeting, we heard about challenges around open swim and having enough staffing for swim lessons. Let's imagine a world where we had full staffing. Do we have a pool problem? Do we have a problem with the actual number of pools? Anyway, I'll leave it there. Hopefully that's clear. And maybe not a question for Robin, but more, yeah, whoever might have some thoughts on that.
I think that's an important question. And I know that there has been a small allocation from the general fund. Is it from the general fund? I'm not sure where it's from, to address potential bridge, some kind of bridge effort. I don't know if Director Long would like to speak to that.
Yeah, Commissioner Rubio allocated $1.5 million general fund to help bridge the gap for North Portlanders while while we're in design and hopefully in construction for over the next few years, and that includes free access to pools in the proximity of North Portland. And we're working on some transportation opportunities too. I think we have TriMet passes. So there's a whole host of interventions that are being put into place to help bridge that gap. And I'll also add, I think the larger conversation is about level of service and really thinking about growing Portland, similar to how we talk about, knowing that East Portland is park deficient and most of our SDCs and any new capital projects are being focused in those areas. So I think it's the same conversation, Aaron, about pools and community centers. I mean, we're beyond demand and capacity in every facility now, never mind 5 years or 10 years from now. So I think, yes, it's a part of the larger conversation. We are thinking about it. And as we think about future potential, measures, and we continue to harken back to the deferred maintenance issue, but beyond the deferred maintenance issues, we've got a growth issue, right? So that needs to continue to be a part of the conversation as well.
Thank you, Director Long. Did I hear you say that was a 2-year funding opportunity from Commissioner Rubio? Because I can't help but notice that our even very ambitious timeline doesn't suggest that this is going to be completed until 2029.
I don't recall if it's just 2 years or not, but I believe it is for a short period of time. So yeah,
so there is a gap.
There is going to be a gap, likely, unless we ask for additional funds to continue offering that sort of an opportunity.
Adrian, Robin, Corbin.
Yeah, I just want to sort of second some of the sentiment that's coming up about what do we really need. I do notice that the two community centers further south have larger overlap, and probably makes a lot of sense because of the population size. And, Matt Dishman, and it's the first time I've heard objective information on how many people that community center is trying to serve, but feels overcrowded. And so I think what Aaron brought up of, what do we really need? And actually is another one required further north, right? Or further east, further northeast. Makes a whole lot of sense, especially if we're talking about, going to create a public measure or what have you to fund things.
Thank you. Robin.
Oh, I just wanted to share that just prior to Director Long sharing those comments, the comment was shared, that this aquatic center was a replacement for Columbia Pool. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about Columbia Pool. Columbia Pool is, technically, this is not a replacement for Columbia Pool. Columbia Pool did not offer anywhere close to the types of programming and services that our other full service community centers provided. And so this new North Portland Aquatic Center will provide the level of programming, if not more, than what are provided at our full service aquatic centers. Columbia does not have a leisure pool necessarily as far as water features, the whirlpool, the lazy river, the tot slide, the big slide, and other programming pieces that are an important part of the whole learn to swim and recreation experience. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Corbin, and then I think this is going to have to be the last comment with respect to this agenda item.
Thank you. I'm as excited as I am about this. I have a little bit of trepidation. Before you decide on the location, because of the neighborhood being the most diverse and we're dealing with people with equity issues and poverty, how can we make sure that this asset doesn't become seen as an amenity and possibly a gentrification situation in which people know it's being built, they're going to start moving to the area and possibly pricing out residents. I understand that Parks and Rec is not necessarily responsible for the housing situation, but to see it as separate from the relationship around gentrification could actually put the community members that need this the most the furthest away from this actual amenity that's coming into their neighborhood. And so how are you thinking through making sure that communities stay in place when they're actually finally given the amenities and the recreation that they deserve in that area?
Absolutely. One of Ken and my biggest concerns is the unintended consequences that may occur because of placement and of this facility. In fact, that's a significant concern of the Project Advisory Committee that was shared in our first PAC meeting. The possible gentrification, as you said, this facility is the gentrifier. So Ken and I have been working with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. We've reached out to the supervisor of the anti-displacement plan, and we have started meetings with our equity and inclusion team with other members of other bureaus so that we can collaborate and support each other to look at stabilization objectives that could be put in place between now and 2027 to support those community members, not only with projects, but also with programming. And this includes reaching out to Prosper Portland and the Housing Bureau to start sort of real strategic thinking about where this center is located and in alliance with where they can stabilize the community, land bank existing land parcels within the city of Portland's control, and also looking at different programming opportunities to support the neighborhood staying in place. So that's also part of sort of the behind the scenes effort that Ken and I and the PP&R Equity and Inclusion team have been working on. I don't have the objectives right now, but we know that the Portland Planning and Sustainability Anti-Displacement Group is coming out with a new strategic plan this spring. And so that's going to help our efforts sort of understand and also collaborate.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin, for this update. Really excited to get this information, a lot for us to think about.
Robin, can you unshare your screen?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will rely on Ken and Melissa and the rest of the team to keep us updated as things continue to move forward. And we hope we'll get other updates on that project as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
PowerPoint, my slides.
With that, we will move on to the Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland Listening and Learning Wave 2 report. Nicola.
Actually, I think I'm going to be
Director Long.
I'm going to be kicking us off, and Michelle's just pulling up some slides.
Robin, is your hand a legacy hand?
Yeah, it is. There we go. Is that it? Yeah. Just put it on slideshow.
Okay. Sure.
There we go. All right. So today we're going to reorient ourselves to the work of renewing the organization's mission, vision, values, and racial equity statements. You will hear The acronym MVVR, I'm giving everyone a heads up, that's what it means. Catherine Jarrell from Future Work Design and Melissa Arnold have joined us to make a presentation about our community listening and learning. But before I turn the presentation over to them, I want to remind us of where we are in the MVVR process. Next slide. Last year, we convened a MVVR co-design team that includes staff as well as community members. Erin from the board participated and has agreed to continue participating. Thank you, Erin, for that. The team reviewed our first wave of listening and learning that happened in 2021 to get community input about how we should renew our core statements. In December 2021 and January of 2022, the team worked together over 6 workshops to draft new core statement options. In the summer and fall, we took the drafts out to the community for input. You probably remember that we had a workshop at your board retreat in the summertime to get your input on the drafts. Responses from the community listening were synthesized and a report was created. We sent the report with the board agenda, but we'll be reviewing the top takeaways today. Before we get into it, let's quickly review how much we'll get from here to final statements. But I want to leave as much room as possible for Melissa and Catherine. Next slide. So we held our first MVVR co-design team meeting last week. The team heard from our listening and learning presentation and are providing feedback on what they heard. Stephanie, Kenya, and Ryan, who is Forward Work Design's graphic designer, are synthesizing feedback and creating new draft options along with visuals for the MVVR team to consider. At our December 22nd MVVR co-design team meeting, the group will provide feedback on these drafts and sketches. They will again be revised and presented to the MVVR team on January 24th. We're hoping to agree on recommended mission, vision, values, and racial equity statements at that meeting. That recommendation will be shared with SMT on January 25th, and we'll have the option to accept the recommendation, accept it with slight revisions, or send it back for a bit more work. It's a very iterative process and very inclusive. We're hoping to get approval here on the 25th, but we have scheduled an MVVR meeting on the 31st in case we need to do additional an additional work session. We will share our draft work with you at the next Parks Board meeting so you can see how things are coming along. We're also sharing our work with the commissioner as things develop. We expect to share this work with City Council and the community after we've drafted our first Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland report, which we're hoping to complete at the end of the first quarter of 2023. And but the final timing of City Council update is to be determined. So I'm going to pass it to Catherine and Melissa so they can share the Wave 2 Listening and Learning report with all of you. It's really exciting work and really appreciate the team that's been involved.
Thank you, Director Long. I'm gonna share my screen here. Can I get,
yes.
Everybody see it? Okay, great. Before we kind of jump in, you know, we've got, I think, less than 30 minutes here for this topic, and this walking through the report has taken, you know, anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes. So I think I just want to really kind of hone in on our goals. And I think our biggest goals are to make sure that everybody here is able to like understand, read, and interpret the report. So making sure that how the report is formatted and framed all makes sense with you, and then give you an opportunity to ask for any context or questions related to the findings. We're not going to be able to go through a lot of the data in detail, but we're going to kind of go through in high level. So this is just kind of an overview of the content of the report. As Director Long said, we're really focused on the feedback that we received community on our draft values, racial equity statement, mission and vision statements, as well as our outcome categories. And I think Director Long kind of spoke to this as well, but just kind of where we are in the process, we had kind of a wave 1 round of listening where we received a lot of open-ended comments and feedback around what the community and our other key stakeholders wanted to see out of our mission, vision, values We used that input to draft statements, and we've brought them back out to similar stakeholders and done another round of listening, kind of responsive listening, as often would I call it. Melissa, you want to talk to kind of who we heard from this round?
Yeah, so again, we don't have tons of time. I would like to orient folks to the fact that in the appendix of this draft report, there's an overview of the kinds of engagement types and the groups that we worked with. But just really quickly, we kind of informally divided our groups into advisory groups, community at large, and then our staff as a bureau. And we took a few different approaches. As Director Long mentioned, you may recall that we virtually engaged this group. We offered a virtual option to a number of groups, including our Parks Accessibility Advisory Committee, our Urban Forestry Commission, as well as some of our community groups. In addition to that, we did a fair amount of outreach around this effort. So we wanted to get out, we're continually asked to show up where community's at, not always ask community to come to us. And so in working to live that value, we launched a pretty, I'd say, comprehensive outreach effort and tried to hit up a lot of different events with communities that we were working to center. A list of some of the community events that we asked a specific question are below. We hit up some more community events, like, for instance, Cambodian Lao, Thai Burmese New Year in the Park as well. But these are events that we asked an outcome category specific question. And our staff, we did some virtual engagements with with all of our staff, and we did a cool hybrid in-person session with our senior management. And then the last thing I'll sort of describe is we did some in-person workshops in the parks. And I'll be frank, taking this content out to community was complex. Trying to make it engaging and accessible, inclusive across language groups and levels of familiarity with the Bureau was a lot of content, and it was pretty nuanced content. So we tried to make it kind of fun. We did these big workshops in 3 different parks that were geographically placed around town that we thought could help us interface with community members that we were working to disproportionately interface with. And they were pretty successful. We offered a small gift card as well as lunch to folks that participated, and we created a structure where everybody got a packet. In that packet, everything was numbered, so there were tokens and Post-its, and folks kind of made their way around the park to different stations and participated using the materials in that packet. So got a lot of positive feedback from community around that approach, made it kind of fun. Yeah, but it was a lighter style of approach than our virtual engagements.
A little bit about the methodology that we used to kind of do our analysis and get our findings. Different from the first wave. In this wave, we were really intentional about gathering demographic information alongside almost all of our participation, everything other than the tabling events. So with all of that great data came a lot of questions around how do we want to leverage this data? How do we want to use it? So I don't know that we have perfected it, but we are looking at this as like an iterative learning cycle. And for this wave, we determined that we were going to do first, for every question, do like an overall analysis. So sometimes you'll see an average stated as one data point that is offered, and we will look at kind of an overall summary of themes we heard and the qualitative feedback. We then looked at all of that same information through the lens of all of our centered communities. So we looked at different group types of staff. Are they staff? Are they advisory group? Are they community group? But we also looked via race, ethnicity, immigrant and refugee status, having or living with a disability, living with low income, gender, and age. So you'll see the data pulled out explicitly for those groups throughout the report, as well as some transparency around the number of people that that data represents. We also did the same kind of review for all the themes on the qualitative questions. We looked through each of those lenses and made sure that those voices were represented in the summary findings at the end. Melissa, you want to speak to these?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm taking too long to unmute. A few things that kind of rose to the top and that we can kind of review and respond to. First, our goal was to center the voices of underserved communities, and we're pleased to share that we were able to increase community participation in this wave as compared to the last wave. That was always the goal, was to kind of expand with this second foundation building wave. So we're pleased to share that we were able to. Secondly, community groups, some themes that came from our various conversations and types of engagement were that folks were really drilling home the importance of clean and well-maintained parks. That came up across the board, across input options and opportunities. And one that they feel like Portland Parks and Recreation has some opportunity to grow into. Safety was a big concern across engagements, both around physical safety as well as emotional safety and well-being, especially related to feeling welcome and included. Accountability is the biggest opportunity area based on what we've heard. It's a key theme for internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, and communities of color. I'll say that I can attest to this because I was at, I think, every engagement, but many stakeholders commented that we were trying to accomplish too much. There was a lot of content, there were a lot of concepts, and those that were interested in discussing wanted more time to discuss and process. It's almost like each statement could have been its own series of workshops. So it was tiring for community. Next is something that we experienced was that taking these statements with really nuanced language that we're trying to pack a lot of meaning into became really difficult because we were working, we were intentionally centering communities at times that spoke languages other than English, and word for word translation and interpretation is not necessarily easy, right? So like one word interpreted into another language doesn't always mean the exact same thing. And so it was a really difficult, our partners that assisted us with translation and interpretation, they expressed some like that it was a lot to ask. It was a lot to ask for folks to weigh in and in this. So lastly, I'll say that I think that what I'll just say is folks are really excited about actions and results. Folks are really excited about the tangible resource allocation decisions and like what they can tangibly expect from our decision making and weighing in on that. And so in addition to believing that smaller group sizes for some groups, like for instance, staff might be a better way to engage around these bureau-wide topics. Another thing that continued to come up was let's help our community set the agenda for what we're discussing. So, and this is not the first time we've heard that, but we heard it loud and clear at times throughout the process.
So for each section here, it's all kind of set up in a similar way. At the beginning of the section, there's kind of an overview of all of the questions that we asked. Now, sometimes with the questions were not the same for every group. So as you look at the answers, there will be like a little left-hand sidebar here that shows you these were the actual groups that we spoke to, as well as the overall responses at the top. Also, each section shows you, this is what was presented to them. So these were the values that we were asking the questions for a response to. And then you'll see the findings. And the findings, we've tried to show you as much data as possible, again, for transparency. So all the ways that we looked at the information, you'll see that when it comes to the values, all of our responses ranged a little over midpoint, kind of in the 3s. When we looked at our group types, one consistent trend that we found is that staff tend to be a little lower than some of our external advisory and community groups. Yeah, Bonnie, did you have a question?
Sorry to interrupt you, Catherine. I just wanted to note that it's 6:45 and I wanted to see if there was any member of the public that came to provide any public comment. Hearing none, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you, Catherine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then you'll also see a breakdown on the data as far as race and ethnicity. Again, we see most of those groups kind of in that 3 range. And then finally, we're showing the data for other centered community groups. Again, mostly kind of in that 3 to 4 range. So then for each of the values, we provide kind of a summary of like, well, what's the opportunity area for us? And this feedback, I think, is really critical to that working team that is going to incorporate this feedback into the next round of iteration. It's like, what do we need to do to get those numbers closer to 5? Here, some of the general themes or comments was like, we really want more explanation of the how. We want more actions and behaviors made more explicit in the values. And we want to have the language simplified. There's a lot of talk around when we're kind of putting these things out in the world, people feeling like this is buzzwords or jargon. And, you know, for those of you that use that language, it's hard to know, like, well, what, you can't see the water when you're in the water, right? So what is buzzwords and jargon? So we've tried to call out and give examples. We asked a lot of our stakeholders, like, tell us what words don't resonate and what words maybe feel confusing. We've tried to provide as much of that guidance as possible to that design working team. And then there's also some comment themes that are really specific to each value, right? So if there were specific comments related to our accountability value, they are listed there. For values in particular, we did a couple of workshop activities that were just very unique to just community groups. I think the interesting to note here is that, you know, community ranked a little, or connection, sorry, the value of connection ranked a little lower with staff. And a lot of the feedback around that was around the definition of connection, but it actually ranked very high with community. We also did a fun activity with community where it was like, tell us the things that you value as a community member, and then getting them to kind of draw some of the relationships that they saw between their values and the values that we stated. So this is kind of some good inspiration for some of those values that maybe didn't hit the mark, to see what other language community is using. And then we asked a couple of questions, largely the audience here was staff, around how do you think PPR is doing living these values today? Here you see the scores kind of dip into more of the 2 range, with accountability being our biggest opportunity area. Qualitative summary or feedback here around how can PPR better live our values. So specifically around accountability, things like moving from talk to actions, holding managers accountable. So our kind of our key takeaways as it relates to the values, as you know, Melissa mentioned in the headlines, is like, you know, clean and well-maintained parks, as well as safety, came up really strongly from community. And this is not new news. This is things that came up in wave 1. These are things that, you know, Parks has been hearing from community for a long time. But we found it noteworthy that it also came up so explicitly in reaction or response to the values, mission and vision that we were showing and presenting. So perhaps they're not coming across strongly enough. I spoke to the fact that connection rated lower for staff than for community, and that accountability is kind of the biggest opportunity area for Parks in living its values. The next kind of thing we asked for feedback on was the racial equity statement. So again, here is the racial equity statement that was presented to our stakeholders for feedback. And the scores here were kind of closer to midpoint. I think there's definitely some opportunity areas for this statement in particular for us to improve. So here for suggestions, our opportunity to improve, we had a lot of feedback around kind of taking more accountability and actually acknowledging our role in history and racism and how we got here. Some feedback on the format being confusing and the language feeling too academic or abstract. We also heard a lot of feedback, or it was just more like questioning or concern about the process around who's going to be involved in redrafting of this, a suggestion for doing listening sessions with our Black, Indigenous, and employees of color around this statement and how we might be able to achieve our goals there. So our key takeaways for the racial equity statement here are that stakeholders really didn't connect with the current statement because it felt too academic and it was like hard to process in a short amount of time. They'd like to see more accountability for the past and very specific commitments for the future in the statement. And that they want to ensure that Black people, Indigenous people, and people of color are involved in its redrafting. So the mission and vision, I think if you remember, we like packaged our mission, vision, and outcome categories in these different packages. And I think, you know, this is where Melissa kind of talked to in the key statements that sometimes people got to a point of fatigue or overwhelm in the sessions. And this is usually where it struck them. It was like, okay, values could have been a session, racial equity statement could have been a session. And now I have to like process all this stuff too. So we are listening and learning and we'll do better. But these were the mission, vision, and in this third category, we had a little bit of a difference in that there was just a mission and the vision was the outcome categories. So that was like a simplified version that we presented. These different options were named rabbit, squirrel, goose to try to get away from trying to lead the witness with any names that felt like they might appeal to one person or not another. So the headline here is these ranked very, very close, so close. It's like almost really hard to rely on the data to try to make any decision. So that felt a little bit like defeating at first. It was like, oh, how do we know what to do? I think on the plus side that people liked all three. There were things that were really redeeming about all three. But when you start to like look at some of our demographic information, it starts to tell a story. And I think the qualitative information also tells a story. So when we first look at it by group types, it's like, okay, goose seems like it's kind of the leader here. Goose is that really simplified version. But then when we look at it by race and ethnicity, we start to see that rabbit is actually the preferred option when we factor in the number of responses from our communities of color. And goose was only the highest with one community of color and had the lowest score for 3. When we look at our demographic groups, our other centered community groups, here, rabbit was the favorite in all of them except for one, which was older adults. So how do we make sense of this? Each one of these then has kind of a summary of what people liked and what they didn't like. And sometimes those two things contrasted each other. So sometimes something that is appealing to some person is not appealing to another person. So being short and simple. I think the headline here is that what people really liked about Goose is that it was like simple language. It felt accessible. It was easy to understand, would be easy for translation, but it felt like it was missing a lot of the key concepts of what Parks does. When it comes to Rabbit, what we heard is that people feel like, you know, we really got the concepts right. They love all of the concepts that are in the mission, but the wording still felt a little fluffy or buzzwordy. It was still like they missed that simplicity in the straightforward language of Goose. And then for Squirrel, a lot of people felt like it hit the mark for kind of being clear and concise, but it was like very heavily focused on access. And there were a lot of comments around like access to what, like it's missing too many of the concepts of the value of what Parks does day to day. So our key takeaways here are, we had one option, Goose was like really liked for its simplicity. Rabbit really came close to nailing the concepts, and that Squirrel, they like really liked that it focused on equity and access, but it needed more than that. So this is the feedback that has been kind of brought to our design team to do the next iteration. The outcome categories tested very, very highly. So these were the outcome categories that were presented with the mission vision options. And the feedback we got here was really strong, which is great because we are already using these outcome categories in our actions and results work. So we do not have to do a lot of rework. You can see from some of our tabling events, especially like most of these scores are over 4. So that's really positive. And, you know, people felt like they like the simplicity of the language. They feel like most of the concepts were there. There's an opportunity area around great jobs, sounding a little bit too subjective. And then we specifically call out urban forestry and climate in 2 of the different outcome categories, which felt redundant to one another. And the term urban forest kind of felt exclusionary of other non-forested systems. A few concepts that could be potentially missing for that team to review. So largely positive feedback here, a couple things that need reconsidering. And again, as Melissa mentioned at the beginning, I'll kind of bookend it here to say that, you know, community, it's like, we feel like we've tapped out community's willingness to kind of engage at this level of altitude. Community is like, we love these things. We want you to go make them happen. Please bring us like actions, bring us the programs and initiatives that we can help weigh in on next. Okay. Got through it, and we've got 4 minutes here for questions. Ellie, I see you.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was great. Wondering how far apart the public were from staff or staff were from public. Sometimes those groups can pretty far apart, and I was wondering how they sort of were or weren't, just based on sort of insider versus outsider perspectives.
Yes, you will be able to see that for yourselves for each item in the data. I know I went through the data really fast, but that's kind of how we broke out group type. And I'll show you a slide of that. So here we'll see staff versus our community groups versus our advisory groups. And in some cases we had SMT was a separate group with our senior management team. But in general, I would say it was probably, if I had to put a number on it, like a half point lower for staff.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Bonnie?
Thanks, Catherine and Melissa. I couldn't help noticing that the 100 points that could be distributed across the 3 animal types doesn't actually total 100 in your situation there.
Yeah, so those would be kind of the averages for each one of those amounts. So it was like people were able to distribute 100 points across, and then these were the averages that got totaled.
I'll also note, Bonnie, that so we gave tokens in the community sessions that were out, and like every now and again we would find like a token on the floor and we're like, oh, well, that token didn't make it into the bin. So there may have been some discrepancies in folks like losing a token or only putting 8 of theirs in. So.
Yeah, or, you know, sometimes people can break the system. So sometimes people don't spend all 100 of the points, right? So.
Any other questions for Catherine and Melissa? Mm-hmm. Thank you. With that, it looks like we are right on time. Thank you so much.
Catherine, Melissa, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
And it's a lot of information, but I encourage you to like sit down and look at it. It's very visually appealing and easy to consume. So.
And if anybody has any specific suggestions or concerns or agenda items they want to bring, send an email to me and Casey and we will discuss it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
If I don't talk to you all, have a good holiday and New Year, and we'll see you in January. Florida Working Group.
2023. Bye.
Bye. Your staff is